Well, at the death, it seemed that Star Trek Lower Decks did have a multi-universe revelation for us. It was just about the wrong show. Space. A continuous extension interval between planets, stars, and other objects. These are the critiques of the critic McElvoy. His continuing mission to review strange new shows, to seek out new work and new bastardizations, to boldly note what no critic has noted before. Oh, hello there. How are you? Are you alright? Well, go on. Give yourself a pat on the back. Lie down if you need to. Go get yourself a cup of tea. You've done very well. You've got through it. You've got through Star Trek Lower Decks. It's all over now, and we can begin that long process of healing together, getting through it, trying to forget about the last, wow, 4 years and 5 seasons. Long time. Long time. Last week, we talked about the multi-universe plot that's been the sort of arc in this final season. And in the final episode, which was called The New Next Generation, oh, how Mike McMahon wishes Star Trek Lower Decks had been the new Next Generation. And it didn't come close. It couldn't see the Next Generation. It was so far away in terms of quality. But anyway, we won't get into that. In this final episode, there was a lot of sound and fury, in which a Klingon subplot from a previous episode was picked up, one that casual viewers wouldn't have remembered or cared about. And this was a device to lure the Cerritos into a situation where it had to engage with this multiversal dimensional rift, the so-called Schrodinger field, which is a funny joke if you understand the gag, is that rather than there being any question as to whether Star Trek Lower Decks is alive or dead, we've always known it to be dead. So there's been any doubt, has there? Not in the right thinking minds of real Star Trek fans. So they had to go to this rift, and once there, they were bombarded by multiversal energy. And every time that happened, either the people in the ships or the ships themselves were changed into a multiverse variant, whatever the plot required. There wasn't really any consistency to this. But the first time it happened, the first time it hit one of the Klingon ships, we had a bit of a revelation. This is a single point of interest, not only in this episode, but maybe in the entire series. And it might be the only important contribution that Star Trek Lower Decks has ever made to Star Trek canon. It's a blink and you'll miss it thing. And maybe it had to be a blink and you'll miss it thing, because for a moment I'm going to suggest something to you. I'm not a conspiracy theory, I believe in any of that sort of thing. But what if, let's imagine, what if Mike McMahon, for all his creative shortcomings and his haplessness when it comes to creating real Star Trek, maybe deep down he wanted to signal to us that Lower Decks, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, multiversal variants from the Star Trek we know and love. But of course, that would be forbidden, verboten, by Alex Kurtzman et al. We couldn't possibly ever say that explicitly on screen. Why? Because if real Star Trek fans ever knew comprehensively for a fact that all of this shit is divorced from Star Trek as we knew it between 1966 and 2005, we'd have absolutely no reason to watch it. The only reason we're here, the only reason I'm here, is to talk about the damage that's been done to actual Star Trek canon. If there is no damage to a once treasured thing, if that priceless Ming vase isn't being dropped every week and clumsily sort of pasted back together, what's something to talk about? This is just a sort of inconsequential riff on something. It's a meaningless cover of your favourite song. And as one particularly persistent commenter on YouTube said to me this week, well, it doesn't matter. The things you love still exist, don't they? I argued, but it does matter if those things have been overwritten and replaced. But if they're not being overwritten and replaced, if the thing that you love is still intact and unsoiled and unviolated and exists within its own self-contained universe, well, then everything is fine and dandy, isn't it? But nobody would watch it. I made the analogy during this thankless argument that the only reason that someone might watch Jaws of Revenge is because it's officially part of the same series as Jaws. Jaws of Revenge gets its cultural cachet from Jaws. And the fact that it's so bad and the fact that Jaws is so good is the talking point. Otherwise, it would just be a generic shark movie, wouldn't it? Jaws of Revenge. And no one would give two shits about it. No one would remember it. If you explicitly said Jaws of Revenge has got nothing to do with Jaws, then Jaws of Revenge no longer has any cultural relevance. And that's true also for Star Trek Lower Decks in relation to Star Trek and Discovery and Strange New Worlds and all the other crap that we've had to endure since 2009. So, rather long-winded of me, but, one has to fill the time. So, what does this mean? What is that thing then? What happened that made us all bolt upright and suddenly draw breath? Well, it was a few seconds of a Klingon as styled from the motion picture era onwards, suddenly transformed into a Klingon from Star Trek Discovery. I'll say that again. A Klingon from our Star Trek universe, the Star Trek universe, momentarily became a Klingon from Star Trek Discovery, the first season of Star Trek Discovery. That sort of weird albino Klingon with the, odd-shaped skull. The thing that cannot really be the same species as the other thing. So what, you say? It's just a joke, right? Doesn't matter. Well, maybe it's just a joke. And maybe it's the first on-screen confirmation that Star Trek Discovery exists in a different universe. If that's true, then Mike McMahon, for all of his terrible work on this fucking shithouse of a show of his, has finally done something good. In the maybe the only thing he could do, the equivalent of, throwing himself on a grenade, to save a nearby Star Trek fan from a terrorist attack, maybe we can remember him fondly because he did that little thing for us of just establishing, or at least implying very heavily, that Star Trek Discovery is not Star Trek. It exists in a different Star Trek universe. It wasn't going to go further, as I hoped he would, and establish that Lower Decks exists comprehensively in an alternate Star Trek universe. But you don't need to say it, maybe. You don't need to be that explicit, do you? Because if Discovery exists in a separate Star Trek universe with all its on-screen incongruities and the tonal incongruities and the continuity clusterfucks, then surely to God, Star Trek Lower Decks also exists in its own little bubble. And establishing at the end of this episode that there's a sort of permanent multi-dimensional rift out there, which will be explored, from a multiverse crew based at Starbase 80, because even though Starbase 80 is a floating hunk of shit of the kind that wouldn't be commissioned by, still be in service by Starfleet, it's immune for some reason from multi-universal changes because of its design. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, look, put all of that crap to one side. The fact that there is a permanent rift comprehensively marks our card, doesn't it? And maybe it allows us to go away and sleep at night knowing that this terrible show, this Twitter account that became a TV series, wasn't something that we ever needed to worry about at all. It's just a multi-universal variant. Now, I hate the multiverse, by the way. And I hope you do too, because if everything's possible, then nothing matters. If every story variant and every character variant matters, well, is a thing, it kind of lessens the importance of the world in which we live, I think. It's not a new thing in Star Trek, parallels, and TNG established that there was a Enterprise for every occasion and all of that rubbish. I just don't like it. I think it's a lazy idea. But then Lower Decks is full of lazy ideas. There was a lot of ironies in this final episode. It's ironic that a one-dimensional show should end on a story about multi-dimensions. That's sort of funny in a way, isn't it? It was irritating that this was not a show about the characters. I suppose Mike McMahon had to acknowledge that, only little token advances for them were necessary. They're not real characters. They're just sort of ciphers, joke machines. They have no interiority, no life of their own. They're not characters that any of us really care about. So why not make the new Next Generation a kind of a techno-babble adventure like All Good Things was in TNG? I, for the record, never liked the fact that TNG ended on a plot about a thing that didn't even have any internal logic. The anti-time phenomenon, the anti-time anomaly. Lazy, lazy, lazy. Make the finale a story. Don't make it about gimmicks or techno-babble or any of that crap. Don't make it about spectacle. Make it a story that really tests your characters, really advances their story, takes them to the next stage. be careful. Don't do what Ira Stephen Bear did on DS9 and make your captain a demigod who leaves his son and pregnant wife behind, particularly if he's black, because then you've inadvertently saddled him with a racist cliche at the death in a show that worked so hard to subvert that particular racist cliche. Character-driven stories, character-based stories that challenge relationships, advance understanding. That's what we want to see in finales. Not a show about the thing, stopping the thing and the thing from doing a thing, using a thing. 84% of Mike McMahon's script for this episode was technobabble. And only 1% was humour. The problem with shows about anomalies and technobabble is that it's very easy to lose track. Famously, in All Good Things, Ronald D. Moore and Brandon Braga fucked it up so that even though the thing was supposed to be generated by different enterprises, they forgot that temporarily and had one of the pulses generated by Beverly Crusher's medical ship, thus undermining the entire concept. They didn't spot that until after it had gone out. And likewise, there was no consistency in the Schrodinger multiverse rift thing. It changed people, then it changed ships, then it changed ships and people, and then just ships again, depending on whatever the story needed at that particular moment. It's the finale of a Star Trek show, allegedly. Mike McMahon, it wouldn't hurt to have another draft, would it? Just to get it right? It's the only one you're ever going to write. So at the end, what did they do? Well, they didn't have the guts to say, relax, Star Trek fans, relax, rational people. Lower Decks is just a bit of frivolous Star Trek parody. It exists in its own sort of little animated bubble. It's crap. Don't worry about it. Forget it. You've probably already forgotten it, haven't you? You probably don't know what this video is about. Didn't have the guts to do that. But by telling us that Star Trek Discovery isn't Star Trek, well, that's a welcome intervention. And we have to say thank you for that much. I doubt very much that Alex Kurtzman noticed that. He's probably watched it with the rest of us and gone, whoa, what? But hopefully, he watches every Star Trek episode he's produced, while looking at his TikTok or whatever, and, or has another screen on with Pornhub masturbating to that porn while the shit that he's produced plays in the background. So he hasn't noticed. But there it is. It's on screen now. And I think the message is clear. So with that, this awful, boring, witless show draws to a close. It ended with a defence of the premise, a half-hearted defence of the concept. Beckett Marin had a little voiceover in which she said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Our crew may be a series of unprofessional misfits, but for some inexplicable reason, my mother, Captain Freeman, handpicked this crew because she recognised that even though we're all terrible at our jobs, we can thrive in an environment with other misfits, which is contrary to every study, every psychological model ever proffered, but okay. Usually what happens when you put dysfunctional people with dysfunctional people is you get more dysfunction, but And she said she tried to sell it as a ship, you know, of people who didn't fit in anywhere else. And then, as a sort of fuck you, a final fuck you to the audience, um, Mariner and Boimler were promoted to the post of Joint First Officer, a position that in any self respecting Starfleet they would never attain because they're morons. And that was it. We were supposed to accept that. Do we accept it? No! Let's do a final anomalous reading. I've covered all the main points, so really this is not so much a nitpicking best of the rest kind of list as it usually is. It's just a sort of, what did we learn? What did we learn? Well, we learned that a Twitter joke account makes for a terrible science fiction television series. Never do that. Never convert a Twitter account into a Star Trek show. Please. We learned that if you're a teenager in the early 1990s and you have an idea for a Star Trek sitcom about inept officers, don't write it down and throw it away, because some arsehole might find it in the future and do it, might make it. Not pay you a penny. We learned there's a difference between joking about something and making something a joke. Big difference. Not one that Mike McMahon appreciates. We also learned that being educated in a subject beyond your intellect has consequences if, by some miracle, one day you are asked to continue that thing on the small screen. We can say for sure that Lower Decks made the small screen that little bit smaller. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we learned beyond any shadow of a doubt, for letting this thing run for 5 agonising seasons, that Alex Kurtzman is a cunt. Critics Log will return because New Trek continues. There's a Section 31 movie out there somewhere ready to strike. There's a 3rd season of Strange New Worlds. There will be a Starfleet Academy series. Can they make it work when everyone else who toyed with the concept failed to find a way to bring it to life? Is Alex Kurtzman the man who can finally turn lead into latinum? The answer, just in case you're wondering, is no, but let's go through it anyway. We'll see you very soon. And remember, shows like Star Trek Lower Decks are extremely rare. So please, don't have nightmares. Sleep well. I'm Dr. McAvoy. It's not my real name. Out.